I texted him. He said he's going to. He's got to ask Taylor a question. He'll talk for the whole 25 minutes.
Huh? Oh, oh, give me that magazine. Give me that magazine.
Are we ready? Welcome back, everybody, to the St. Louis United Soccer Show on a brisk Sunday morning. That's Itchy-Coo Park by the Small Faces. Went on to become the Faces when Rod Stewart joined them. This song, Tom, as you know, is noteworthy for this part right here, which is the first use on a commercial record of a flanger effect, which is now commonly used. This part right here with the drums. That's a flanger.
A flanger?
Yes, you want to know more about it?
You know, what's really awesome is that you finally contributed something to the show.
There you go.
It's an hour and a half into it, and then, well, I'll just, give some of that information.
Well, I like to time things, Tom.
Well, that's the way to do it. What are you pointing? We have our guest? Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Tim, how do you like to introduce our guest?
Taylor, you there?
Oh, boy.
There it is. There's my introduction. He's my firstborn. Okay.
Taylor, welcome back to the show.
This segment.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? How are you?
Oh, we're living the dream. Edmundo tells me we forgot to tell people that this segment is brought to you by Choose It Right. You ever hear of Choose It Right, Taylor?
I have. I wish it was around back in the Stone Ages when I was playing.
You know, we talked to you, we were talking to your dad about this whole deal, and it seems that your college preparation is what introduced him to this whole world, right?
Yeah, honestly it is. When we reflect on it, my brother played at Stanford, my sister played at Richmond, and then St. Louis University as well. I think that their college experience was set up by mine, but a lot of it was based on, I had high aspirations, as the man in your studio will tell you, and I think sophomore year, I think when my dad heard numerous amount of times out of my mouth that I wanted to play at the highest level baseball-wise, as much as soccer, but that was the inevitable, is that I think he realized, well, wait a minute, a kid in St. Louis, Missouri playing shortstop really wants to go play somewhere. We've got to send out letters. We've got to be, I think, proactive instead of reactive, and I think that experience then went to my brother, then ultimately to my sister. I think ultimately when you tell parents about this, when you tell coaches about this, even though most coaches will lie to you and say they do that work, they don't. I do. I think my experience is the reason why Choose It Right was created.
Well, it's funny. We were also talking about creating your own brand, which is what obviously that's the new concept, I guess, that people are starting to explore. And I used you as an example. To me, you're a guy that's built the brand, and you just demonstrated it when you said most coaches will lie to you and tell you that they're doing what they're doing, and they won't. And I think the thing that distinguishes you, if I might jump from Choose It for a moment, as a broadcaster, is a lot of people act like they call them like they see them. You call them like you see them. I mean,
yeah, that's probably why I only got about 2 Christmas cards this year, and both Christmas cards were from family members. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think if all of us had a real conversation in 1998 and you brought up brand, or even 2008 when I was still playing, I would have laughed. Like, brands in this world are Kobe Bryant, Lionel Messi, LeBron James. Those are brands, but social media changed that. And for better or worse, it's besides the point. It's here, and every individual athlete or student or person for that has a voice, and ultimately that voice is a brand. And, there's different levels of brand. We can always talk about that, but the reality is that social media has completely changed the landscape of how individuals are viewed, but also how individuals view themselves. And I think if you're true to yourself, which I always have been, it's got me in trouble sometimes, and I think my dad could tell you some fun stories off the record, which could make everyone laugh. But the reality is, at the end of the day, everyone respects what I say because they know it's coming. It's what I feel. There's no shenanigans. There's no agenda. It is what it is. But when you think about building a brand, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say when I thought about doing broadcasting, which I never thought about doing, I hated the media when I played. I didn't think I'm going to build a brand. I just am myself, and ultimately I think that turned into my brand as a broadcaster, my brand as a spokesperson the older I've gotten.
Let me ask you this because it just occurred to me, interrupt your father. How much of your brand was formed by your having that awful concussion that ended your career?
I don't know. Well, I mean, that is a massive part of my brand. So, yeah, that's a massive part of who I am as a person. And I told the real story and not the fake story, so maybe that built into it. But I don't think that it's because of the injury. I think the injury helped build a persona and a public person where people now look at it and say, he's going to tell the story, and he's going to tell the truth whether you like it or not. I just think it sped it up. I mean, if you would ask me at age 28 that my career was going to end, I was not going to sign the $6 million deal over in England and not move on and do that kind of stuff, I would have told all of you, you're out of your mind. The prime of your career, and you're thinking about playing in the 2010 World Cup, and then a year later you're thinking about, well, what can I do to make my life better, and how can I survive the rest of my life because my brain is in a certain situation. That changes everything, and it changes your perspective. But to answer your question, I do think it had some impact because I had to tell a story. And I think that story, helped convince people that, you know what, when we're going to have him on, we're going to ask him questions, he's going to give opinions, he's going to give his opinion whether you like it or not.
Hey, Taylor, I was let me add a little bit because when Taylor first got injured, he was in the Boston area, and he got asked to do some talk shows and radio shows, and that's really where this started for him. So it wasn't like it wasn't just like it. Taylor, you want to go work for ESPN? I mean, he put in a lot of effort to get there, and to try to compare that to other kids, kids feel entitled a lot of times that they're just going to move on and do certain things. They have to put the effort in. And that effort is, you got some gifts. Taylor had some great athletic gifts that he used, but it was still the effort behind it that made it all happen.
Well, you guys are talking about choose your right today, right? And
right.
Many people think that Taylor Twellman, and I'm not, this player had Division I offers in baseball, soccer, and kicking and football. Huh. And people think that it just was there. I don't think people fully understand what I meant by the opening comment that I made, is that literally sophomore year of high school, we sent out 50 to 100 letters in all sports. Here I am as an All-American. Here I am as really the perfect bloodlines from my mom and dad's side of the family, and yet I was proactive because my dad was a big part of that. Then it comes to my concussion, and to just elaborate on the story, every single night I drove 35 to 40 minutes to a local show here in Boston, huge show, and they talked about Red Sox, Celtics, Bruins, and Patriots. And I literally sat there and watched, and then finally one day, just by chance, someone wasn't there to host, so they said, Taylor, do you want to host? And everyone in that room was like, oh, boy, what are we doing? Soccer guy's going to host this show.
Keep your finger on the button. He might go off.
Right. Think about it. Like, that red light went on, and they're like, what are you doing? And we did a 24-minute show. I've had zero coaching, zero teaching. Did I make mistakes? Absolutely. But I could actually teach a broadcasting 101, 201, 301 class in college now because I was thrown in the fire. But I think people listening to this, it just doesn't show up at your door no matter what you want to do. If you want to be a fireman, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a teacher, you want to be an athlete, or you just want to go to school. I don't think people understand and especially the generation now, and this isn't an old man, get off my lawn type of comment. This is fact, not opinion. The more you act on it, the more energy in the universe you're going to bring towards yourself to actually reward yourself. And I just think people need to understand it just wasn't people knocking down my door junior, senior year of college because I scored X number of goals and hit X, my average, whatever it was. No, it wasn't. We sent out 200 letters or something stupid to get me on the radar of other people.
And this is before the internet, right? So, we're
Actual letters.
a lot of licking stamps and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it really does. It's a great reward back to the kids that do this, because what happens is when they start getting responses back like Taylor did, it just motivates you to keep going.
Yeah. Hey, okay, Josh, we got to get your question in before the break.
Yeah, before I went to say to Taylor, as a fan, I wanted to thank him personally for all that he's done for the MLS for the Lou group and our motive. I mean, he's been a huge part out there getting the word out and being a face for it. So, Taylor, thank you for all that you've done for this city. We really appreciate it. My question.
You can thank me when we cut that ribbon.
There you go. Okay, hope so. Hope soon. But my question's about, just to change topics, in the opinion of many people, including myself, the night that the U.S. men's national team didn't qualify for the World Cup, we felt like you spoke for the rest of us. Your passion and your opinions after the match were some of the best material I had seen in a while. And, of course, since that time, there's been some change with the U.S. men's national team. Obviously, we have a new coach, we have a new president, and all of this different stuff. I wanted to ask you, I know that a ball hasn't been rolled out and Coach Berhalter hasn't coached his first game, but where are you at now with the U.S. men's national team from that moment that they didn't qualify for the World Cup?
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, first and foremost, those comments on ESPN were as raw as they could be because, as my father knows, I was scheduled to play in arguably the best member-guest golf tournament in the history of golf tournaments at Shinnecock and National Golf Links the following next 2 days. And because the United States failed to qualify for the World Cup, I couldn't go play golf. So naturally, I was going to have a little angst to my that's a little background. It was unprepared. The jury's still out. Listen, this has absolutely nothing to do with Greg Berhalter because if you sent out, first off, it shouldn't have taken you 14 to 15 months to hire a new coach when you just failed to qualify for the World Cup. That still doesn't make any sense to me, but that's not a slight on Greg Berhalter because what I don't think the American sports fan and the American soccer fan understands is that if you went through a world search, Greg Berhalter would have been in your final 3, 4, 5 selections. Absolutely, unequivocally, no doubt about it. So that's not a Greg Berhalter thing. But when the United States failed to qualify for the World Cup, I asked a question. And the question is whether or not you are capable of making the necessary changes to compete with the Colombias, the Argentinas, the Belgiums, the Englands of the world. Yet we are having a conversation because right now the United States is struggling to qualify with Honduras, Trinidad, Panama, Mexico, Costa Rica. And with the amount of resources we have in this country, that shouldn't even be in the conversation. The reality is this. When the United States starts winning this year, then Josh, your question is, a lot of fans are going to come back. Winning solves a lot of things. But for the soccer nerds and the soccer dorks and the ones in the weeds like myself, systematically, I need to see changes. We cannot have a sport be exclusive. It needs to be inclusive. Why do we in this country, over 25.6 million kids in our country playing the sport of soccer, some registered, some not, but that's a rough number, but why is the majority of them, if not all of them, a rich man's sport? Why is it a suburbia sport? For instance, let me use this. Christian Pulisic just signed for Chelsea in a transfer over $70 million. You guys tell me how that would resonate on the inner cities. That resonate exponentially more than LeBron James and then any of those players getting those deals. Does that make any sense? And yet still, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, no one's even talking about that.
Right. It's a culture thing here. It's a
but
culture.
How do we get those kids and all kids to play? It's not paying $3,500 to $5,000 a year. I'm sorry, it's not. And until systematically the United States figures that out, then you're constantly fighting upstream because the rest of the world is not. In the viewers, the listeners at home in St. Louis, because St. Louis doesn't have an MLS team, and the academy is different with Scott Gallagher and whatnot. What you need to understand is this, is that a kid that plays for Arsenal's academy still pays, but he's not paying $5,000 a year.
Hey, Taylor, can I ask you a question? Could you stick around for another segment, or do you have to go?
No, it's fine.
Cool. All right, let's go to break real quick and come right back.
And we'll be right back after these brief announcements. Please stick around. This is 590 The Fan, KFNS, and the St. Louis United Soccer Show. We'll be right back.